Welcome everyone to the December 2023 project update for the GNU Radio project. We're happy that you were able to join us, and we have a lot of updates. So we're going to start doing these updates quarterly, where in the past we've done them monthly and missed them here and there. But the downside of this is there are a lot of updates. So we have a lot of news to bring to you. So we're going to get right to it. So Jeff Long, our maintainer, is going to walk us through the recent releases and upcoming releases. So Jeff, all yours.
So we're doing quarterly releases now. I guess that'll match up with these calls pretty well. And that's worked out pretty well because that makes sure that, first of all, we're not always doing a release because there's a bit of a process in there. But when packagers and distros go to pull the latest, we've usually got some pretty recent stuff up there. So Fedora and Ubuntu, distros like that are able to pull a little bit more recent stuff. 3.10 is really what we're focusing on, and that's for the foreseeable future. The reason for that is that we want to keep the API the same. That includes things like the GRC file format and other file format compatibility. And while we do that, we want to try to get in as many new features as possible. So we're working pretty hard to make sure we can backport things into this maintenance release, but they aren't going to mess anything up. With some very small, occasional new things like dependency requirements, because 3.10 is such a long-term release that some things, for instance, like Python 3.6, they just go end of life while we're in 3.10. So occasionally we're going to have a new dependency in here, but best we can. We'll keep everything really compatible and not introduce a lot of new dependencies. So 3.10.8.0, we're pretty much always doing .zeros because it's just kind of like simple bug fixes that would increment that last number. But that was released in October, and we're just about ready to release 3.10.9.0. It'll probably come out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Of course, this is an online call, so you got to look at the date of the call to figure that out. If you want a lot of details on the releases, you can go to this link just on our GitHub site. And we always post change logs so you can see if something affects you. But for these couple of releases, I just pulled some highlights. If you want to hit the next slide there, Josh. So for 3.10.8, and these aren't necessarily the most important things. They just brought up points that I figured would be interesting to talk about. A lot of the changes are just somebody found that something didn't work at all for their application, and it might be a one-liner, and we fix it, and nobody else ever notices it. So it's hard to tell what's important. For that one person, that was really important. But we're focusing usually on small new features or changes to existing features, some fixes, a little bit of internal refactoring when we find that something makes life a lot easier for development. For example, the common complaint is that for low sample rates, the frequency sync, I think maybe other syncs, take a long time to start up because they have a buffer that needs to be filled. So this was addressed in 3.10.8, and it starts up a bit faster. LDPC, it turned out this is one of those places where we broke our rule on API changes because it was completely broken, and we hadn't found any evidence that anybody had gotten the LDPC decoder to even work. So that's been fixed, and it reportedly works. I'm not an expert on that, but we do have test cases where it works. Kind of a simple thing, the repeat block, which takes each sample on the input and produces n copies of it on the output, and I think it can do that with blocks too. It had some buffering problems. It was doing some bad math so that you could put in some values that just made it crash or churn out wrong data, and that was fixed. Another common complaint is that every time you open up a Python block and you've just started GRC, it asks you which editor you'd like, or it uses a default. So there's now a choose editor function, and you can choose it once, saves it in the config file, and you don't have to do that again. So that was just an annoyance, but it's really great to get that fixed. And then for logging, you could log a lot of different types but PMTs did not log well, and that's been fixed. So if you're writing code, you've got a PMP and you want to spit out something to log, that works great. An external dependency update that we ended up putting in this version, it turned out that we had a bug in the way that ZMQ sockets shut down. And to fix it, we needed to use a function call that was not put in the C++ ZMQ wrapper in earlier versions. So we updated the version of that was required. And one problem with that is that sometimes the Red Hat EPEL is a bit behind. So 8 has a pretty old ZMQ.hpp, and so it's acknowledged that GR0MQ might be disabled unless you update this one file, which is pretty easy to do. You can just go find the C++ wrapper, looking for ZMQ.hpp, put a new one in the proper place, and it works fine. But occasionally, the distro gets old enough that something like this falls out. Okay, let's move on to 3.10.9. And this one is coming out within the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of work in this one in testing. Clayton Smith, who is the maintainer for GQRX, did a lot of work in making sure that all our CI tests reliably pass. And one reason that they don't pass, even if they might pass most of the time, is that our continuous integration virtual machines have a little different timing than a real machine might have. So we end up with, if you say wait for a second for something to happen, and it doesn't happen within a second on one of these virtual machines, then we flag it as a failure. And that's the pain in the neck for development and maintenance. So we've had a lot of fixes to these tests, and they're much more reliable in telling us whether there's actually a problem. The conda recipes have been updated, and we're really recommending that people who want a newer version and don't want to deal with building code take a look at conda at least. It's really useful. There's a couple of things like some of the dependencies. For instance, UHD, you might get locked into a specific version, but for probably 95% of the users, if you want a recent version and your distro doesn't have it, give conda a try and see if it works for you. The GRC application on startup, whenever you have a different version or if you don't have a block cache, in order to make it so that you don't have to wait several seconds every time you start the app, it builds this cache from all of the block YAML files that describe each block in GNU Radio. And we found that a fairly simple change sped that up to the point where we might not even need the cache, but it had another advantage too. As you'll hear later, there's some improvements coming to GRC, and one of them is going to be a browser for examples. And the same thing speeds up looking for all of the examples that apply to a specific block. The parameters you can set on a block, you double click on a block in GRC, it comes up with a whole bunch of parameters with a really mysterious set of colors for the background of each field. And if you don't have all the colors memorized or you can't see all the colors, then this is really not a great way to specify what kind of thing should go in each one of these fields. So I made a change there. And the other problem with that was that if you had dark instead of light theme, then we had to go through and find all kinds of other colors. And there were some somewhat humorous attempts at finding different colors. And we decided just to do away with all of that. So now to the right of each field in parens is the type, which is much clearer. You don't have to remember that yellow is, I don't remember, whatever yellow is. It just says int. There always seem to be a lot of RF knock updates. The NI EDIS people keep supporting the GRU HD, which includes RF knock for the latest features in their firmware loads. And one thing that's more general that they've added this time is the ability to specify properties on connections or the edges in your GRC graph. Right now, this only has an effect for RF knock. They needed it to say whether there was feedback on a certain edge because of the way RF knock works internally. But this could be extended in the future to if a property really rightly belongs on the edge rather than on the block, we could add it there, and perhaps that'll have some usefulness in our version 4.0, because that's what's coming out. We'll have to see. And then we are starting to use Python type annotations in a couple places internally, because we were only requiring Python 3.6 and it didn't support a couple of the type annotation classes. We bumped the requirement to 3.7.2. Given that that release itself is also end of life, we thought it was fairly safe to bump up to that. And then we've got a couple of things on Volk. Johannes is really the maintainer for Volk, so I'm not an expert on the internals of it, but a couple of major things that happened when we released Volk 3, it switched to LGPL. This was a culmination of a very long time of trying to hunt down the people who wrote the code, because a switch of license from GPL to LGPL requires a sign-off from everybody who contributed. But that was finally done. And the advantage to that is that other people can use Volk in other projects more freely without the restrictions of the GPL. GNU Radio, of course, is still GPL, so it doesn't really apply to people using GNU Radio. Just recently, 3.10 came out, and that has a lot of fixes in it. Clayton, who had addressed a lot of tests and test issues in GNU Radio, focused his energy over on Volk and found a lot of stuff that really was errors on some major architectures and some obscure architectures. So a lot of fixes got in there, one of which was actually required to fix something in GNU Radio. So with the right combination of things, that bug gets fixed, though it's if-def, so that there's not a hard dependency on 3.10 for GNU Radio. And we're starting to see a little bit of support for RISC-V, which people are excited about. Cool. I think that's all I have, Josh.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. And thanks for all you do on the maintenance front, rallying the community to get all these features into regular releases. I know it's hugely impactful for the project. So thank you very much. And thank you for sharing here.
Sure. And we'll see you next quarter.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Jeff. All right. So Derek, you want to walk us through the ARDC grant?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. So the ARDC, Amateur Radio Digital Communications Group, issued out a grant a full year and a bit ago now, which is amazing to me, to improve the usability of GNU Radio. I've spoken about this a couple of times at GRCon and in other updates, so this is just an incremental one. The main progress that's been achieved is in the installations and GNU Radio Companion. So the goal with the installation portion is to make it much easier to install GNU Radio, particularly on Windows and Mac, where Radio Conda has come in as kind of a decent answer in the last year or two. But historically, it's been quite challenging. And for new users and for people who have an existing workflow and are just expecting GNU Radio to work like every other application on these systems, we really wanted to be able to ship official project binary installers for the GNU Radio core, and in kind of a really nice improvement in usability for out-of-tree modules as well. We still have to work through logistically how that will work with the authors of out-of-tree modules, but we have engaged with Kitware, which is the company behind CMake, to improve the build systems of GNU Radio's core and provide a template for out-of-tree modules, which will let us build these binary installers quite smoothly and natively on these systems. And we'll get around to actually providing signed binaries so you can have a reliable and authenticatable installer. The out-of-tree modules should be a really nice improvement as well. Some of the things that will hopefully come out of this are a good guides on how to build your own out-of-tree modules against a binary installed version of GNU Radio on Mac, for instance, as well as the CMake templates and stuff to make that easy. We are hoping that proof of concepts of these installers will be out by kind of mid-February, and you'll see why later on in this call. And then the work will be completed summer of next year. There's ongoing software maintenance and support. We have 350 odd issues currently being tracked on GitHub. And as part of this ARDC grant, Marcus Muller is going through and triaging all of those issues. Many of them are years old at this point, and a bunch of them have been resolved or have been made irrelevant due to other changes in GNU Radio. So a lot of this is just cleaning up the house. We've missed having a spring cleaning, but we're having a really nice fall cleaning. So next time you hit the GitHub issue tracker, hopefully it'll be a little bit tidier. Also, GNU Radio Companion. We've been talking about this for a while, and Hakon has presented some of his own work as a community member in the past, and I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring him on as a paid contractor to really push the Qt port of GNU Radio Companion to the point of being both genuinely usable and hopefully even preferable to the current GTK version of GNU Radio Companion. So you can check this out right now by building the feature GRC Qt branch out of GitHub. The README for that branch has some instructions right at the top of how to launch the alternative version of GNU Radio Companion. This is not changing the file type of the GNU Radio Companion blocks. It's not changing any of the structure of out-of-tree modules. It's just an update to the graphical library used with GNU Radio Companion itself. Some of the nice features that this is bringing, in addition to just a more modern UI toolkit, is an out-of-tree module browser. So you can actually see what out-of-tree modules have been installed in your currently active version of GNU Radio. A preferences and settings menu. We're finally getting it, so no longer will you have to dig around and find, that grc.conf file hiding in some hidden directory in order to change your audio buffer sizes. Those are being exposed up into their own menu. And so I'll let Hakon show off some of these improvements.
All right. So Hakon Volk is currently working on GRC enhancements to add a whole bunch of features. And this is done under an ARDC grant that we've received. And he is going to step through the current progress of what's going on. So yeah, Hakon, good to talk to you. Take it away.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Yeah. So I guess I'll just start sharing my screen. This is a port, I guess you could call it, of the existing GRC GTK version. I've based it on some work that started under Sebastian Kozlowski and Seth Heitfield, and I just kept on doing that work. I think I'll just first of all show how to check out the code, and then I'll step through what it looks like after that.
Cool.
So this is the main repo, the GNU Radio repo, the Qt version of GRC is on its own branch. It's on the feature GRC Qt branch. And if you scroll down to the README file here, you can see the brief rundown of how to run it. So installing PyQt5 is the first step. I actually think that if you install these packages using your package manager, you should be fine actually. So you might be able to skip this step. And this step is mostly just for the testing. More on that later. And the feature GRC Qt branch If you've already built and installed GNU Radio, you don't really have to do this again. You can just check out the feature Qt branch. Yeah, and then you can run this command to start the Qt port. Yeah, so one last thing I'll show here on GitHub is that the progress is being tracked using the GitHub project feature. So if you go to the projects, the classic ones, and Qt GRC, you can see the kind of rough progress that's going on here.
Awesome.
So I've tried to do as much GUI testing as possible so far. It's a bit finicky, but yeah, it's proven to be quite helpful to make sure that I don't break stuff while I'm adding new features, and yeah, getting the Qt version closer to the original GTK version.
Nice.
So yeah, I guess this is kind of more or less the main big thing remaining, the variable editor.
So that's the
kind of
last piece to get to feature parity with the previous GRC.
Well, I mean the last large single
Big
piece,
one.
I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there are like cosmetic things that are still not quite the same, and yeah, and these three pieces are actually new features that aren't really in the
Nice.
in the GTK version. So this is the preferences menu, the out of tree browser, and yeah, theming. That's kind of a
Nice.
might be a big piece as well. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
And then in terms of, so, you know, GRC is in the same code base as the rest of GNU Radio. Has the rest of the code base stayed pretty up to date with the current GNU Radio, or like what version of GNU Radio is this tracking against the feature Qt branch?
So the feature Qt branch is tracking the current main branch.
Nice.
I'm probably like once a month updating the branch. So
pretty
yeah,
close.
should be pretty recent. Yeah, definitely.
Nice.
Yeah. So I guess I'll just dive in. So here we are. We've checked out the feature GRC Qt branch. And to open GRC Qt, we can run python -m grc /qt. All right, so this is GRC Qt in all its glory.
Nice.
So yeah, it looks pretty much the same. The block library has been moved to the left.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a wiki browser here on the right. So if we go to core and the audio sync, for example, takes a second, and then suddenly the wiki page for the audio sync is here on the right.
Nice.
Yeah. And most things work. I mean, if you open an existing GRC file, I can actually show it. Well, first of all, there's this new thing, the example browser.
Okay.
If we go to File and Examples, these are the categories, and these are examples in the category. So these 4 categories are from GR Digital. They have a bunch of examples. Yeah. So if we try opening this, yeah, here it is, and we can zoom out. As you can see, the one huge annoyance at the moment is that the sizing of the blocks aren't quite the same.
Right.
So existing flow graphs might look a bit messy, I guess.
Is that just for variables or for all blocks? Or
that depends. I mean, most blocks they look the same, but the size of the blocks in relation to the positioning isn't quite the same. So that's why this block looks kind of regular, I guess, but it looks way too close to the other blocks.
Mhm.
So that's just an issue of zoom and scaling, really, that I have to figure out. But it's it's mostly a cosmetic thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, and if we, I mentioned the example browser.
Mhm.
This is actually a lot of examples and a lot of code, or I mean YML files to loop through. So so all of these are actually cached. So if you're running GRC Qt for the first time, you'll see a progress bar at the bottom that displays the progress of just looping through all the examples, parsing them and caching them.
Now, it looks like for the examples browser that it was also grabbing examples from out-of-tree modules. Is that that mechanism's built in, so someone building an out-of-tree module with their examples, they'll show up here as well?
Yes and no. I've kind of cheated right here. I've I made some changes to the GR satellites CMake list, so it would actually install the examples as well.
Okay.
To the same directory. So that's why it's finding those files.
Okay.
And it's also collecting the title and author and the description of the examples. And a lot of examples don't have all this filled out, so that's why some of them just say title and author description.
Right.
So yeah, you can also find specific examples for specific blocks. Let's say you want to know how the audio sync works and you want to see how do other people use this block. So you can right click the audio sync, press examples, and then you get the same example browser, but now all the examples have the audio sync in them.
Oh, very nice.
So the audio sync is present in all these examples. And I've also tried to make the block library a bit quicker to use. So if we press Control F, and then let's say we want the null sync, so we write null sync, press Enter, and then it's right here.
Very nice.
So that should be pretty quick. That's the intention, at least. Other things, I suppose I could mention the out-of-tree module browser.
I think that's a very exciting feature.
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is also a bit cheat, because I haven't. There are still a lot of things to hash out in terms of the manifest files and so on. But all this data is that's being displayed right now is actually being parsed from manifest files.
Okay.
So I guess the main things to decide on the manifest files are standardization and where to put them, really. And maybe the manifest files should contain a list of the files that the module contain as well.
Now, is that manifest file, is that going to be in the GNU Radio or GRC code base, or is that something where it goes and grabs it from like PyBomb, Cgran off the internet somewhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess what I've thought of right here is that this browser should only display the modules that are installed currently. So
Gotcha.
I guess this would be from the local computer, but I guess something like getting it from Cgran would make sense as well. But then I guess you should suddenly have an install button as well, and then it's a lot of work
Yeah.
to get all that working. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems like
I'm not
super
sure about that
valuable.
quite yet. Yeah, definitely.
Even, yeah,
So,
having the AutoTree modules that are installed on your system displayed here.
Yeah. Yeah, so these are all parsed from manifest files.
Nice.
And then there's also another new thing that kind of works as it is, but there's still some work to be done on it. That's the preferences menu. So if you go to File and then Preferences, this is a new thing that's not in the GTK version. So we can change the editor and hide the disabled blocks and show complexity. I'm not sure if I've actually connected these options to the actual functionality yet, so I don't think we'll be able to see anything if I press OK here. Yeah, no, nothing happens,
Right,
but we can see that it's been being written to the conf file.
Nice.
So yeah, it's I guess the main thing that is remaining for this piece, the preferences menu, is deciding what should go in it. Should some things be outside of this so they can work for gRCC as well, or should they kind of be connected in some way? Yeah, there's some big questions there. So
right, but this should be much easier than having to go in and find the grc.conf file and edit the YAML directly, restart grc, all of that.
Yeah,
definitely a great usability enhancement there.
Yeah. So the thing I've done so far is just having a YML file. You can see actually the YML file is being mentioned here. Available preferences. That's where you specify, much like the parameters of a GRC file, GRC block. Yep. Sorry, actually just saying which preferences should be available to the user. So yeah.
Cool. All right. No, looks like tons of usability enhancements in the works here, and that was the purpose of the ARDC grant. And so a huge thanks to the folks at ARDC, you know, for funding GNU Radio and Hakon to add more usability into GRC, which is, you know, the way that most people jump in and use GNU Radio. So this should be long-term impact and you know, help us as a project for a long time to come. So cool. Thanks for sharing, Hakon. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Great. So the other piece of work was the installers. As I said, the goal was to create to make this much easier to install on different platforms. The current contract just extends to evaluating our build system structure. That work is now complete, and we're just waiting for the formal statement of work and actual legal contract to come through for the work to get kicked off. But we're very excited to see the improvements happening to immediately to 3.10, and then Kitware will also be spending some time with the architecture team and the developers of GNU Radio 4.0 so that we get started with the off on the best foot with our build system for the revised and updated version of GNU Radio. So,
question, Derek. And in an ideal world, would this be something where, you know, you would download GNU Radio.msi, double click, and you have GNU Radio on a Windows system? Is that the goal?
That's 100% the goal. And then you would be able to go to somewhere, which is the work yet to be figured out, and download, you know, grsatellites.msi, double click that, and have GR Satellites up and running, compatible with your version of GNU Radio.
Very nice.
I could see that being something that we build into CGRAN, which is probably our much loved and much neglected or underutilized library of out-of-tree modules. Quite conceivably, depending on how this grant goes, we could have Kitware do some work with a continuous integration set and actually build those installers for CGRAN, but that's up in the air and we have to see how the first part goes. If anyone's interested in that, we'd love to hear from you, and definitely more hands, more cooks in this effort would be very helpful. So this is an ARDC grant that was proposed directly by Dr. Vishal Gajjar. He's an investigator at the SETI Institute and has been doing some outreach and education efforts and applied to the ARDC to get a grant to create a 12-week curriculum, mostly targeting community colleges to cover radio SETI. So this is doing techno signature searches and other SETI operations in the radio spectrum. And GNU Radio came up organically as a great tool for doing this. I think we have to credit Daniel Estevez, who's been working with the Berkeley SETI research summer students in part for raising the awareness of what's possible with GNU Radio in radio astronomy. So this will cover the basics of signal processing and digital communications. It will have an emphasis on the use of radio telescopes. I was going to say radio astronomy, but it does have that broader applicability to all variety of signals received from space. And so Dr. Gajjar is looking for educators and instructors to run a pilot program. He's going to run a workshop next spring, likely in the May timeframe, although that's still TBD. If you yourself are an educator or have a link to a community college or kind of advanced high school program, do please reach out. He does have a form here that you can type in the URL or send an email to info@gnuradio.org and we'll make that connection.
All right, thanks, Derek. On the GNU Radio 4.0 front, this is continually being actively developed, driven by the team out at GSI Fair. So if you weren't able to catch these talks at GRCon 23, there was a few talks centering around what's going on currently with GR 4.0, what the plans are for it, and then a panel discussion about where we think it should go next. But check out these talks. This will give you a good idea if you're not familiar with what's going on in GNU Radio 4.0. Especially these talks by Dr. Ralph Steinhagen, who is really leading that effort out at GSI Fair, and he's been very visionary about things that modern tools, modern compilers, and modern coding practices can bring from the high performance computing world into the SDR world, as they are active users of GNU Radio, and they saw some other things that we could bring in, which should be very valuable in the future. But all of that discussion, planning, really goes on here in the architecture chat. So if you're not part of our matrix chat and you're interested in being part of this effort, go jump over chat.gnuradio.org and join the architecture room. We have periodic meetups. So our next meetup is December 18th, this coming Monday, depending on when this shows up on YouTube. But we also have a mailing list here, groups.io/g/GNU-radio-scheduler, legacy reasons. But that's where I'll typically send out the Outlook invite, so it can show up in your calendar when we plan a meet. So yeah, join us. The next set of topics are going to center around how we take the current code being developed out of GSI Fair with their build system and bring that into the GNU Radio GitHub repository. So that's the next topic, is really the steps needed to merge that in and start bringing this in as a GNU Radio owned project. So related to that, one topic, which is tricky, but it's something that we really want community feedback on this. And I'll try to describe this as best I can. I'm not an expert on licensing, but the code that's being developed out at GSI Fair was developed under LGPL license, which, there's a trade space here between software freedom and software flexibility. So there's implications on this code remaining as LGPL, that some of the 4.0 derived works, including out-of-tree modules, might not be as restricted as the GPL v3 in GNU Radio is. So we have no plans. Anything that's in GNU Radio currently, the GR3.x code base, we're not relicensing anything. So code that gets ported into GR 4.0 will remain GPL v3. So when you use that, include that in your builds, your output product will be GPL v3 licensed, the same as GNU Radio. But kind of our disposition from the GR board, we've had a lot of discussions about this, is that we're kind of inclined to leave this particular bit of code, it's the core, for GR 4.0 as LGPL, because that's how it's being brought to us. And the authors, did that for a reason. So we're going to leave it that way, but we're also not going to we're not going to go out of our way to make LGPL output products the default, right? If you want to go and build things around the core, and then the output product is licensed as LGPL or whatever LGPL allows, that's on you. That's up to, what you negotiate with your lawyers, how you figure how that works. But we figure in reality, there's enough GPL v3 coming across that realistically, this won't have broad impact for people that are using GNU Radio the way they've always used GNU Radio. But again, we're floating a trial balloon here, and we have a survey. So please fill out this survey. Let us know how this impacts you, either positive or negative. There's a spectrum, right? There might be people that think this is a great thing. LGPL would allow me to use GNU Radio in scenarios I haven't been able to use it in the past because of my corporate lawyers. And there could be other people that say, no, this is a violation of the principles of free software, and I will stop using GNU Radio. So we want to know those things. So it's an anonymous survey, but if you want us to reach back to you to talk more, please leave your contact info in the survey. But yeah, so I guess anything you would like to add here, Derek? I did a lot of talking there.
No, I think you've hit the main points there, and this is a nice and pragmatic answer that we're putting out in front of the community. And so it's time for community feedback, which is what this project update's for.
Right. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And yeah, it's really imperative for us to hear from people to know what the right thing to do here is. But speaking of the community, one of the great things about GNU Radio is the events that we have throughout the year. And the first one that we want to talk about is what just wrapped up a couple months ago, GNU Radio Conference 2023. So a great time was had by all. We had amazing speakers. So here were our keynotes that we had through the week. So we had Eric Blossom talking us through the history of GNU Radio and kind of how it came to be and his experience as the founder of this project. Dr. Lindy Elkins-Tanton walked us through the Psyche mission, which this was very timely, and it was great that she was able to come and do this because it was right before the launch. Like the timing of that was quite incredible, and the launch was successful, and I believe Daniel Estevez was able to get lots of data coming back off of this this craft. And so if you check out his blog and his Twitter feed and everything, there's lots of information there where he used GNU Radio to capture the signals coming out after this mission. And then Dr. Konstantin Balanis stepped through antenna design principles, and fascinating for the black magic of RF design as it is. And then Ralph Steinhagen on his usage of GNU Radio, leaning towards GNU Radio 4.0 at FAIR, and also just the presence of Ralph throughout the week. Lots of activity there. So I guess Jeff, Derek, what were your favorite parts of GRCon 23?
I think it's something that we didn't throw up on the sheets here, and is always a bit of a pity to mention on the call, is the workshops. We did have a really big set of workshops, including one where everybody was able to set up. Good, you got it on the next slide. A bunch of workshops, including one where folks set up a 5G base station on their computers, which I thought was really quite cool. The variety of the variety of workshops was a really big highlight for me, and the capture the flag and other hands-on activities through the week were really good. The CTF is still running if folks are interested. Just ctf.gnuradio.org, I believe, redirects to it. So that's a bunch of wireless challenges, starting from very easy to mind-numbingly difficult, that you can follow along with yourself.
I think we had more workshops at this conference than we've had at any GRCon in the past. I think maybe 12. I don't know the number, but it was a lot. Like we had several workshops every day throughout the conference. And also, one of the benefits of the conference being on the college campus, which we haven't done in several years, was Dr. Bliss and his Wisco lab. He took a group of people through an impromptu tour, and that tour continued through a lot of the facilities at University of Arizona. Super interesting, the work they've got going on there. So we were very grateful to our hosts, University of Arizona State University. Wow. Arizona State University, the Wisco lab. So
yeah, don't start any fights there.
I know. Wow. Yes. I might have to edit this.
I was going to say my favorite part of these is always where all of these really smart virtual humans that we talk to all the time become real humans for a short period of time before we go back to virtualness. It's a lot of fun to see everybody.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. You work with people online for months and years, and then you finally meet them. Completely changes the dynamic of your working relationship online going forward, because you meet the person, you understand them a bit better.
I feel like we're fanboying at this point, which is fair enough. But for me, I wasn't able to attend last year's GRCon, and that was the first one in 6 or 7 years. And it was truly wonderful to be back and just getting to talk with people, and all the, when a presenter gives their talk, of course, there's so much else that doesn't make it into the slides and into the talk, and being able to follow up with people is great. Now, that said, if you watched along virtually, I believe all of the slides are up, all the recordings are up, and they tend to include an email address, or you can usually find an email address for most folks. And so if you have something you particularly wanted to follow up with, I think most people would be very welcome to receiving a considerate email.
And as always, this event does not take place without generous contributions from our sponsors. So just additional recognition here. We're grateful for our sponsors, but that leads us into 2024. We have another exciting event planned. We're back to our usual week, which is the 3rd week of September. And it's going to be in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you've never been to Knoxville, Tennessee, it's an exciting city. The event is going to be right downtown, which should be fun. There's going to be lots of stuff to do, social events, impromptu gatherings, everything. There's the event's going to be at the convention center, the Knoxville Convention Center, and it's right downtown, walking distance to lots of hotels. And it's going to run from the September 16th is a Monday. We're going to start the main track on the Tuesday, kind of like we did this year. There will be some sort of soft start on the Monday evening, Monday afternoon, perhaps some tutorials, hands-on activities. But the main event will start on the Tuesday, go from Tuesday to Friday.
Come and finish your slides on the Monday.
Yes, exactly. We'll do some trial runs. Generally, this is what the schedule is going to look like. Tuesday to Friday, Monday soft start, and then we'll finish, relatively early on the Friday so that people can travel home, not have to stick around until the Saturday to travel if they don't want to. But because this event is in the South, Knoxville, Tennessee is a college town, SEC football team, and there is no football game on the weekend following the conference, which is a good thing for our conference. Otherwise, the city would be packed and you would not be able to get a hotel. So the good news here is that there is no football game on the Saturday following the conference. All right. But in order to make this a successful conference, we need your help. One of the main ways we could use your help is outreach, spreading the word about the event. We would love to grow the community through these events. So if you know universities where, where people are doing SDR research, any kinds of wireless communications, anything that would apply to GNU Radio Conference in terms of presentations, projects, posters, workshops, if we can get the word out about this project, about this conference, the more people, more new people that we're able to bring into the community, the better. And then, of course, there's always volunteer opportunities. We need people in terms of the planning of the event, but also at the event, the ability to do things, even as simple as, running mics to the people asking questions. And then also just anything you'd like to see at the conference. Are there particular speakers that that are in that area? Anything that you would personally like to contribute that might not fit into the normal things that we do. So maybe there's events or contests that you'd like to see. Just please let us know. Email grcon@gnuradio.org. That'll get to the right people. All right.
So coming up sooner than GRCon, we will be, not we will be, I should be clear about this. There is a software-defined radio and amateur radio track at the Free and Open Source Developers European Meeting, FOSDEM, running the first weekend of February in Brussels, Belgium. Here is an overview of the number of talks, the talks that have been accepted. In addition to this, there will be a GNU Radio booth as part of the expo, so we'll have some demos running. We do have a good team already behind that expo booth, but if you have, something particularly cool that you think would be good to present to this audience of software developers and who may not be into SDR yet, please do let us know. Pop into the general chat or email info@gnuradio.org. This is a track that is occurring on Sunday. FOSDEM runs both Saturday and Sunday, and we expect to have a bit of a semi-formal social event, semi-organized, I should say, semi-organized social event on the Friday leading into it. So we're really looking forward to this. Last year, we did not get a track. There was not enough space at FOSDEM, so this is a return of the radio dev room. Next up after that, in May, we will be running a GNU Radio Hackfest at the Allen Telescope Array. This was last done, I believe it was May of 2019. This was never anticipated to be a 5-year delay, but we're thrilled to be going back, and we have much stronger and more mature contacts and connections with the SETI Institute, as well as other groups in the radio astronomy space. And we're looking forward to making the most of that. So the Hat Creek Radio Observatory is located out in the Lassen National Forest. It is quite remote. And as part of that, we do have the benefit of a really radio quiet zone and an opportunity to get away from distractions and focus on particular topics. So the theme of this Hackfest, which is likely to run for 2 or 3 days, is FPGA and high sample rate DSP integration with GNU Radio. So over the past several years, we've had such efforts as the custom buffers and GR CUDA as a reference example of that on how to integrate GPU-based computing into a GNU Radio flow graph. There have been a few proofs of concepts of how to integrate FPGAs, but nothing that I call a long-term vision or a fully fleshed out option outside of NI's RF NOC. And even RF NOC, as was mentioned earlier, is still maturing in how it's expressed and how it's integrated with GNU Radio Companion with its new connection/edge properties. And so we'd like to see a lot more of that infrastructure component put into GNU Radio so that we can better support these applications. As part of that, we're hoping to work with the Casper group. This is a large, long-term open source project based in radio astronomy, providing multi-gigasample per second FPGA data flow applications for radio astronomy. And they have a lot of interest in integrating with GNU Radio for their processing. We're also looking at some GPU-based frameworks that have been up and coming and wondering how we can take lessons from them and also integrate where that makes sense. So we'll put out more details of this in our next project update. If you're interested in this Hackfest and think that you have something particularly along these themes that you'd like to help kind of organize the Hackfest and propose as a track or an idea, a project to work on, shoot us an email, info@gnuradio.org.
And yet another event, European GNU Radio Days is happening again this year. It's going to be a different event than the EU GNU Radio Days has been in the past, primarily because it's going to be focused very hands-on on GNU Radio 4.0. So this event's going to be happening at GSI Fair, who is, they're leading the GR 4.0 development. And it's the contributions, the schedule is going to be open to talks about things other than GR 4.0, but the tutorials and the hands-on content is going to be very focused on GR 4.0. So a big part of this is going to be what's advertised here. I've kind of butchered the poster that Ralph put out here, but is 2 days of GNU Radio block coding party. So one of the outcomes of this that we would love to see is a group of people coming together. First of all, banging on the new APIs for GR 4.0, but developing blocks that that people are interested in, that want to see, get transitioned over into GR 4.0. So that would be great to come out of this event with a much larger block set than we have going in. So this is in August, at the end of August, the 27th through 30th, in Darmstadt, Germany, and that puts it fairly close to GRCon 24. But we expect that these will be very complementary events. This is going to be very focused on tutorials and GR 4.0, whereas GRCon is much more broad SDR community event, lots of talks. So we're excited about this one and what happens with this. So Derek, you've also been involved in the planning of this event, and perhaps some of the EU GR days in the past. Anything you'd like to add here?
So first of all, in terms of location, for folks who are not intimately familiar with the geography of Germany, this is located just south of Frankfurt, so very easy to reach both by train and by flight if you're coming in from a bit of a farther distance. The facility is going to be excellent, as we have a lot more space than we've had in I think in past European GNU Radio days. I was able to attend the one in Paris earlier this year, and it was phenomenally successful. I believe there were over 60 people registered, and the technical talks around timing and synchronization were quite illuminating, both for me and the fact that they were talking about things at a research level and next generation technology level. So the thing that I think is already present here that I would just reinforce is, yes, this is a call for participation as well about the use of GNU Radio. Obviously, there's nobody using GNU Radio 4.0 yet outside of FAIR and a couple of people kind of experimenting. So the other thing that this definitely includes is if you use GNU Radio or would be interested in using GNU Radio in an industrial setting or more of a deployed application setting, this is definitely a large part of what GNU Radio 4 hopes to mature from where we're at. And so the talks about next generation C++ standards, I believe that we're going to have one of the contributors / authors of the STD proposal / I believe accepted proposal almost in C++ 26 will be giving a talk and a workshop. There's some interest in SYCL as a heterogeneous compute library and how that could play into future use of GNU Radio. And then FAIR is a significant user of the White Rabbit protocol for timing and frequency distribution. And so we're hoping that we can find more people to participate in active discussions around where those technologies could be integrated into GNU Radio's use in the future. I think that's what I have.
Yeah, so just kind of give an idea of a tentative schedule. This is not set in stone. The week will be, combination of keynote talks, talks that come through the contributions, community talks, and then very tutorial heavy. And lab tour should be super interesting because it's at the particle accelerator. So I'd be very interested to see that facility, and I don't know, super interesting to me that GNU Radio is being used in that context. It's very different than the wireless communications world that we're all mostly used to here. There will be a registration fee to defray some of the costs, and it's a limited. It's a bigger space, Derek said, but it's still a limited space. So there will be a limit on the number of people able to register, and that registration hopefully will be opened up by the time this video drops. But if not, it'll be open very soon. But more information, events.gnuradio.org, and you just click on European GNU Radio Days.
And just to put a small addition onto that, if you are a student, an educator, or an individual hobbyist, individual user, let's not put boxes around anybody, but for someone for which the €100 registration fee would be a significant barrier to participating, send us an email, tickets@gnuradio.org, and we're going to have some system for discounted registration. We do want as many people as possible to be able to attend. The registration fee is just there to help us be able to run the event and support the project.
Yeah, very good point, Derek. Thank you. All right, and as always, internally in the GNU Radio project, we organize around these teams. So if you are interested in getting more involved in any of these areas, please let us know. info@gnuradio.org. Each of these teams kind of has their own email address, but we like to you even see within this this project update here, we try to hit all the different areas. We didn't hit them all, but hit the areas from the teams within our internal structure. So if there's more that you'd like to see from any of these teams, you can, I think on our website, gnuradio.org, you can find the right people to reach out to if you want more information, or just hit the general email address. And then, of course, the general places to go if you want more information about the GNU Radio project: main website, the wiki, which is constantly being updated. All of our videos, all the videos from GRCon 23 are up here, YouTube, GNU Radio project, and ongoing chats, discussions, both on the mailing list and chat.gnuradio.org on the matrix chat. So thank you, everyone. Questions, please let us know, and hope everyone has a happy holiday season, and we look forward to seeing you next year.